everyone, I'm Dee. This was my first time going to camp. It was my first time being away from my husband since we met 4 years ago. It was my first time being away from my son. And I bawled like a baby before we got on the vans to go because I was leaving my child, you know? So, but Hanalei nicely, gently took me off of his chest and told me to get in the van. But when we got there, it was an amazing, amazing trip just going on there. And the sisters in the car, in the van, we asked each other, what is it you dare to dream? Well, when it was my turn, I had nothing to share. I had said that I didn't dare to dream anything. That was the theme of the conference. I didn't dare to dream anything. God had already given me so much. How dare I, right? Who am I to ask him for even more? I mean, he gave me a husband, a child, a relationship with my family, wonderful sisters, and he gave me a relationship with him. What more could you want, right? So I was afraid. I said I was afraid. I didn't want to ask for more. How could I? So when we got to camp, first day right off the bat, right? Whoa, that's a whole nother story. That's another testimony. I'll tell you guys another day. But the second day after lunch, Pastor Lisa took us on a prayer walk. Now what the prayer walk is we all walk together as a group down a path, but in silence. Just us together, but not talking to each other, us and God, and letting the Holy Spirit lead us. Well, we got to the end of a trail, and there was a creek. So Pastor Lisa told us, hey, you guys grab a rock, and this rock will signify whatever it is you want to leave behind on this mountain that you want to give up to God and let go of, right? So I'm walking around looking for a rock, me goofy, right? Cannot find the little rock like everyone else had. I had to find this big, giant rock that I thought was so funny. Oh, look what I got. I got a big old rock, right? So, standing in the back, and as the sisters were slowly, one by one, thoughtfully and prayerfully walking up to the creek and releasing their rock into the creek, my rock, my funny, big, giant rock, suddenly became my rock. It was my rock. I didn't want to let it go. I wanted to hold on to it. It was my rock, right? It signified, at first, I thought it signified my fear and sense of unworthiness that I had been holding on to. But as I stood there longer, I realized it signified my pride. My pride that I was using to cover up my fear and my insecurities, and it was something that was protecting me that I didn't want to let go, and it was my rock. It was, the Lord of the Rings, my precious? It was my precious. And this rock that I was holding outward at first, suddenly I held so close to my body, and I stayed in the back of the crowd, and I cried. You know the kind of cry that your nose is running, and your hair's all over your face, and your eyes are blurry, you cannot see anything, and your god-awful sounds are coming out of your mouth, but you don't care, right? That kind of cry. And I stood in the back and watched all the sisters throw their rocks in, and at one point I realized that I was the only one left holding my precious, right? And I started to walk forward slowly, and at some point, I couldn't anymore. I was planted exactly where I was. Too far from the creek to make the rock go in, right? But I stood there, and I cried, and I cried, and I couldn't let go of this rock. I just wasn't ready. It was what was protecting me, I felt like. And there was, when they tell us that we fight a real battle, a spiritual battle, that was all going on inside my head. There was so much chaos and confusion, and I can't even describe it, but I tried to lunge forward, I tried to move forward, but only my upper body would move, my feet were planted, right? And at one point, I was going backwards with my rock. I didn't want to go near the creek. I went backwards. So I just stopped because I didn't want to go backwards anymore. Who wants to do that, right? So I stopped, but I tried with all my might to move forward, and I could not. My feet would not move, absolutely would not move, no matter how much I willed it to. And as I closed my eyes, not even praying or thinking of anything, just crying, that I heard the voice that I had heard the night before. Dee, haven't I taken you all the way? Haven't I always taken you all the way? And with that one voice, through all that chaos in my mind, in that one moment of clarity, I suddenly stopped crying. Like all out, went from ah to nothing. And I finally opened my eyes and I looked around and I saw all my sisters with their eyes closed, their heads bowed, and their hands stretched forward. They were interceding for me because they knew there was a battle going on. And with as much determination that I had, I ran forward and I threw that rock into the creek. But in that moment, I knew that not only was God fighting for me, but that God was using my sisters to intercede for me. And I want to thank you guys. I never got a chance to thank you guys all for praying for me that day. And I know that, you know, God's voice is so clear. In that moment, I knew I had accepted my calling for this church the day before, the night before, but it wasn't until that very moment that I knew that I could do it, and I embraced my calling. I came back from camp. My husband, Hanalei, said that you came back so on fire, even more on fire for God, but I have to disagree. I didn't come back on fire. I came back free. Free, whatever is holding you back, you don't have to wait till you go to camp. It can be today. It can be in this very moment. If you guys let go of your stupid freaking rock, throw it in the creek, because you know, to be free, I can't even tell you. I can show you though. It feels like